I swear this is not an April Fool's joke. Brian Gutekunst thinks the Packers pass rush, the players on the roster, are good enough already.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. You've been asking, nay, demanding, the Packers make upgrades to their pass rush. But Brian Gutekunst was asked about the pass rush, and he thinks adjustments to scheme, advancements of players, that's good enough. Here's what he said at the owners' meetings down in Palm Beach.
I hope a big one. You know, I thought they took a big jump during the season last year. I thought by the end of the year we were playing some really good football on defense, and so I'm excited to see what year two brings. You know, not only with our players, but just with what, you know, Jeff was out of the league for a little bit, and for his ability to adjust in season. Now having a full off season, not only to know our players better, the league a little bit better. I'm excited to see what we can do on defense.
You haven't addressed the pass rush this spring yet. Can you do everything you need to through the draft to get that pass rush to the level it needs to be?
I think we can do everything we need to do through the players we have on our roster right now, because I think there's a significant amount of improvement for those guys, not only in year two of a scheme, but just I think individually as well. So we've invested in that quite a bit already, and I'm excited to see the growth that those guys will have. If the draft happens to bring us, you know, some more ammunition in that category, great. But I don't think it's something that's necessarily we have to go chase.
Now, I'm sure everyone will respond to this calmly, rationally. I don't think what he means is we will not look to add to this pass rush in the draft. I don't think he means that. The we won't chase it is important, though. To me, that's Brian Gutekunst's way of saying we do not feel we as a team are locked into taking a pass rusher in the first round. And your mileage may vary on whether you think that's a good idea. I think that's what he's saying. Now, if they're not going to take a pass rusher in the first round, where are they going to go? Well, we spent yesterday trying to follow the breadcrumbs. Could this be the opportunity for a Luther Burden, for a Teteroa McMillan, a Jaden Higgins? If they don't feel like they need to chase pass rush, maybe it is. I'm not dubious. I am a little dubious of that, I guess, but I don't think that's crazy by any means. I also think it's important to point out that he didn't just give the banal, flat general manager, hey, you know, we really like the guys in that room and blah, blah, blah. No, I think Jeff Hafley is a really good coach. That's in there. He's got a full offseason with these guys. He knows these players better. That's in there. That was a real thing for Matt LaFleur in this offense. We saw with Aaron Rodgers, 2019 to 2020 was night and day. Now, you have the MVP, or the guy that eventually becomes the MVP. Do the Packers have a player on this roster that good? Probably not. Is Jair Alexander going to be on this roster? That's going to be a big piece of this. Brian Gutekunst made it pretty clear he would like to get something of value for Jair Alexander. I think in part this is a way to create leverage for Ja to say, look, no one is out there banging down our door to trade for you. So maybe you should consider a pay cut and that would either A, make you more attractive, or B, come play for us for 1 year and we'll trade you next offseason. Or we'll trade you at the deadline if people are calling. But right now, no one's calling. And you're not going to get more money than you are currently owed on this contract. If we cut you, you're going to make less money than if we let's just reduce that salary a little bit and come play. Let's make this work. Maybe there is actually a number at which the Packers want to keep Jair Alexander. It's just not his current number, maybe. But back to the pass rush part of this, I had a discussion with Austin Krieger, who is a Packers content creator as well, about why would the Packers want to put a roadblock in the path of someone like Lucas Van Ness? And to that, I say, who cares? Either Lucas Van Ness is good enough to stand up to the competition from a first-round pass rusher, in which case that's good for the Packers, and they've added depth, high-end, priority premium position depth. Remember, they drafted Rashawn Gary in 2019 after signing Preston and Zadarius Smith. They drafted Rashawn Gary knowing for at least 2 years they would not want him to be in the starting lineup because they're hoping that those free agent signings would work like 65% as well as they actually ended up working out for the Green Bay Packers. And if he can't beat out the combination of Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox, and this first round pick, then you were right to not worry about hurting his feelings or stunting his growth because he just can't play. He just isn't good enough. And then maybe he's just a rotational guy for you, which would make the first round pick that you used on him, the top 15 pick that you used on him, look pretty bad. But that's a sunk cost now. You can't worry about that. If he can't beat out whatever the guy is, it's not worth worrying about. It's also important to remember, Kingsley Enagbare is going to be a free agent this time next year. Brenton Cox is going to be a free agent this time next year. So there goes your depth. If you don't take anyone, you're looking at Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, and question marks. So I put all of this together and I go, okay, the Packers don't feel, and they would never admit, yes, we feel like we absolutely, no matter what, have to take a pass rusher in the first round. They would never say that. But they also don't have to say, we feel confident in these guys. But I understand why they would. They fired the defensive line coach for a reason. They believe in the talent in this room. And I guess a lot of this is really coded in they believe in Lucas Van Ness. Or at least Brian Gutekunst does. They believe Kenny Clark's drop-off in pass rush is anomalous, or at least not indicative of where he can play this year. They believe Jeff Hafley can once again scheme a pass rush up in this group. And if that's the case, if you believe in Jeff Hafley to scheme things up, then you don't have to expend premium draft capital to create guys who can win one-on-one matchups potentially. You can say, hey, look, you get a guy in the second, third, fourth round who's fast, can blitz, and Jeff Hafley is going to scheme up these simulated pressures and these double A-gap mug looks, and he's going to bring these exotic designer blitzes. Well, then you don't have to use a first-round pick on a pass rusher who's going to go win one-on-one because you're going to rely on Jeff Hafley to go do the thing. All of these things are not reasons to freak out. I saw some freak out on social media yesterday about this. People going, oh no, here we go again. Goody's going to do nothing. As if nothing in this case implies they pick no one. Like the capital is going to get allocated somewhere. They're going to pick someone high. They're not going to go from pick 23 to pick 50. And if they do, they're going to get considerable other draft assets to do that. And in fact, in this draft, that might even be the smartest way to handle this. In one of the mock draft Mondays we did, I believe we traded down, we being us, Locked On Packers, and picked up 2 more day 2 picks. Like that's wonderful. That's where the heart of this draft is. That makes sense. If the guys that you really like, we talked about the super clean prospects. And by the way, we get to add JTT from Ohio State to that list tested much better than I expected. The tape is pretty good. He's a better run defender right now than a pass rusher. I think a lot of the, I went back and tried to find, I watched the tape. I watched 3 or 4 games of his, and I went, where are all the sacks? And I watched the cut up and I was like, oh, okay. It's a lot of schemed up, or it's a lot, against inferior competition. It's not like he's going out and beating, the Texas tackle one-on-one a bunch. But he's now a Packers type. You add him to the list. A cleaner fit. They don't have that many options. And I think this is potentially Brian Gutekunst acknowledging that at the top of this draft, there just aren't that many super clean fits with these pass rushers, especially if they want an edge guy. And I have come to the conclusion that I think Landon Jackson has a real chance to go in the first round. And I think right now he is the dark horse pick at 23 for the Packers. Ideally, you'd like to move back a little bit, but I have him in the 30s, like the high 30s for draft capital, the low 30s based on true numbers. Like the 33rd best player in the draft. A late first, early second round grade. Well, that's where the Packers are picking. I don't think that would be a crazy thing for the Packers to do. But I understand if that's the best pass rusher on their board when they get to 23, there's probably another really good player on the board. There's probably a corner that they really like. There's probably a guy like Trey Amos or Jahdae Barron or Luther Burden on the board for them. And maybe you just say, well, we'll just let the draft come to us. The Packers always want to be in a position to let the draft come to them. So they feel like they are in that position with their pass rush. I'm not sure they're wrong. I'm also not sure they're right. But we will find out very soon what they actually think here, or if this is just bluster. Because if they go out and they spend a first round pick on an edge rusher, I'm not saying that Brian Gutekunst is full of it, but I think what he's saying will be, yes, we think these guys are good enough, and it's the case. We feel like to be the best version of ourselves, we need to add upgrades to this room. And by the way, you can never have too much pass rush. Speaking of pass rush, someone's got to block those guys. And those players who block those guys get paid a premium. Jason Hirschhorn, my colleague at The Leap, wrote about the future of Rasheed Walker on Monday. I want to talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on wine. I like wine. I like it a lot. But you just, a little bit here, a bottle there. Maybe people are coming over. Let me get 6. Well, sometimes you don't realize, oh yeah, that's right. That all adds up. And all of a sudden it's more than maybe you want to be spending. I like wine. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. We've talked about Rasheed Walker as a potential trade piece for this Green Bay Packers team. My colleague over at The Leap, our friend Jason Hirschhorn, America's guest, who was just on the show on Friday. If you missed that, go check out his work on the quarterbacks or listen to that podcast, or both would be the preference. He wrote on Monday why it actually makes sense that Elgton Jenkins is the odd man out on this offensive line. Rasheed Walker is young. He's established himself as one of the best young offensive linemen in the league, one of the best young left tackles in the league, certainly an above average player at the position. Those guys get paid. Well, Elgton Jenkins is moving to center. Brian Gutekunst confirmed that in that interview, part of that interview you heard earlier. Okay, you've got Jordan Morgan. He can be your future right guard. You just signed Aaron Banks. You're going to extend Zach Tom. What if you extend Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan becomes the future at right guard. Now you've got Elton Jenkins at center. And if you move on from Elton Jenkins in 2026, you save $20 million. $20 million is almost dollar for dollar APY. What I have said, I expect Rasheed Walker to command on the market. And at this point in 2026, probably more. Elton Jenkins, Brian Gutekunst said it. I've been saying it for years. I think can be an all-pro caliber center. So if that's the case, isn't it worth it to just keep him and move forward? Well, I think potentially it depends on how this season goes. You're giving yourself flexibility by keeping Rasheed Walker, by not trading Rasheed Walker. You're keeping that flexibility. But since Jason wrote that piece, Brian Gutekunst said, again, part of that interview, Jordan Morgan is going to be given the opportunity to compete at left tackle. What if he wins or nearly wins that job? What if we go into week 1 and he's rotating there because they don't need him at left guard? Elton Jenkins is playing center and Sean Rhyan is the incumbent right guard. So yes, you could give him a chance to compete at right guard. But isn't he more valuable at left tackle if you think he can be an upgrade? Now, in camp, it's going to be hard to say, hey, Jordan Morgan, you didn't really get a rookie season. We played you all over the offensive line as a rookie. And now we need you to compete at left tackle and at right guard. Like this is a lot to put on a young player. And it speaks to how highly they think of Jordan Morgan that they would even countenance the idea of doing this. They think Jordan Morgan is a really, really good potential player. So what is the best way to handle this? I think we have to let it play out on the field. At least in the short term, it gives them tremendous flexibility to put your best 5 on the field. Rasheed Walker at left tackle, potentially Jordan Morgan at right guard. It could be Rasheed Walker and Sean Rhyan. It could be the same group that they had last year for most of the season, only you move Elton Jenkins to center and you plug in Aaron Banks at left guard. Jordan Morgan becomes your swing interior offensive lineman, and that's that. And in fact, it may be the case that happens, but Jordan Morgan plays well enough in camp that make them go, yeah, I think he can play left tackle, and you move on from Rasheed Walker. Now, I think if they have even an inkling that that's true, they will rotate. They have shown, and to their credit, they have shown a willingness to say, we will just rotate these guys. In playoff games against the number 1 seed San Francisco 49ers 2 years ago in a playoff game, they are rotating their right guards. Rotating. This is not college. This is not high school. And they were doing it. And it was working. That's the crazy part. It was working. So that could happen. Or maybe Jordan Morgan just wins the right guard job outright. Here's the rub, though. If you're going to keep Rasheed Walker, then Jordan Morgan needs a home. Maybe it's at right guard. Well, then Sean Rhyan, again, a free agent next year, just like Rasheed Walker. And if you're going to keep Rasheed Walker, you got to pay Rasheed Walker, and you're paying Elton Jenkins. It is untenable. And as this is the point that Jason is making. He agrees with me, essentially, that the Packers are not going to pay everybody, right? It's just a matter of, well, who is everybody in this case? My inclination is to say Elton Jenkins is worth it at center because I think he can be an all-pro caliber player. You don't just move on from an all-pro caliber player, even if he's expensive. What you do is you take your cost-controlled asset, you move him over to left tackle, you let him do that, and then you let Rasheed Walker go. You let him get the bag in free agency, and you take whatever compensation you can get in terms of a compensatory pick. But that still leaves Sean Rhyan, and with the guard market the way that it is, he's going to get a John Runyon Jr.-like offer if he is the starter this year. Now, maybe if he's not, if Jordan Morgan is the starter, maybe you're able to keep him. But then how can you possibly know that Jordan Morgan can play left tackle? So this is why this gets complicated, because there's so many permutations to work through. Again, in the short run, It's a good, not even problem. It's a good thing to have about your team, the depth. They have at least 6 players that they feel confident in going out there and playing. Half the league doesn't have 5. And I don't know if you know this, you need 5. So that's a luxury for them. The questions come after that. I don't know what the best outcome is, but I think what we're finding is they're going to need to draft an interior offensive lineman in this draft to either play guard or center. If they draft a center, really at any time. Jacob Monk is on the team. I don't know that we know anything about Jacob Monk to know that he could be the potential center of the future. We just don't know enough right now. Maybe it's Sean Ryan. Maybe you extend him and let him play center, but that seems unlikely to me. I think more likely you need a cost-controlled player in there. If you're going to pay Zach Tom a bunch, you're already paying Aaron Banks a bunch. You're either going to be paying Elton Jenkins or Zach Tom a bunch. You need to find someone who's either going to start at guard or center for you. Are you going to draft a tackle who you can JC Treader and move into center? Are you going to draft a tackle who you think can play guard? Or are you going to draft a center, a true center, to be the center of the future, knowing that, hey, you could be getting Jordan Morgan? I think who they pick could tell us about where they feel like they're going potentially, like where they think this offensive line is headed. If they draft a center, I think Jason is right that they're going to look to pay Rasheed Walker and move on from Elton Jenkins. But I also think Elton Jenkins is the kind of player to get a 3rd contract in Green Bay, the kind of player, especially if he comes out and has an all-pro caliber season at center, that you just go, hey, we can't not have this guy. And then it does become a bit of a problem. But it's one of those good problems. It's one of those champagne problems. And you might just have to figure out how to pay everybody. But they're going to have to get some sort of interior offensive lineman here. And I think the most likely outcome is they find a tackle that they think is probably a guard. And then they cross-train him, guard and center, and see what that bears in terms of fruit. All right, the Packers pushed forward the idea of the Tush push. It seems like there's momentum for this. What do the Eagles think about this? I talked to Louis DiBiase about it, and we will talk to him next on Locked On Packers. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. Right now, Duke, even money favorites going into the Final Four to win it all. And it's not surprising. They are, by Ken Palm rankings, the 2nd best team ever by his numbers. They are outrageous. Cooper Flag, unbelievable. Duke's kind of likable. I say that as someone who was at the first Syracuse Duke game with a Beat Duke shirt on. They're kind of likable. I hate to say it, but it would be an emotional hedge, I think, still to bet against them. And you're getting better odds on these other guys. If you want to bet the futures, Houston, Florida, you're getting much better odds. Something to take a flyer on, but then Duke crushes your dreams. Maybe not an emotional hedge. So you want to bet on them. I guess that's the emotional hedge. Yeah, that's right. I did that, right? Yeah. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hip action all tournament long. The Green Bay Packers apparently took one for the team. Mark Murphy, the team's president, on his way out, pushing for the Tush push to be banned. And we heard from a number of coaches at the owner meetings down in Palm Beach in Florida. Oh, player safety. This is the way they're going to get the Tush push ban. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Lou, what do you think of this latest tact of putting this under the guise of player safety?
That's my problem with it. Just say that you don't like that it's an automatic play for the Eagles. Say that if you're a team like the Green Bay Packers who are competing in the NFC with this football team, that you don't like the automated part of it and you want it out because it's an advantage for Philadelphia. To me, the data says this play is not any more dangerous than any other play in football. It has not caused any serious injuries. So people hiding behind that as their reason to want this out of the league, I can't really get behind that. If you wanted this out for other reasons, then we can have a discussion. But the data is the data, and I don't think it's a dangerous play.
The part that bothers me is I just want it called properly. Can we just call everyone
Sure.
needs to be onside, offense and defense? Let's just call it the way that the rule is written and make that a point of emphasis. Like we see the point of emphasis every year. Why can't that be the compromise here? Like it's not any more or less fair. Any team can do it. So let's just have it called correctly.
Yeah, I get that. And again, if the Eagles were running this on first, second down, if they were running this like 30 to 40% of the time on their offense, and they're averaging, because they do sometimes get 4 to 5 yards out of this play, if they were doing it in that kind of way as almost a gimmick. But that's not what they do. They run it on the 1 yard line of the red zone and obvious third and fourth and inches situations. I don't think it impacts enough of the game to say, even if it wasn't about injuries, if you're talking about the product, it hurts the product on the field. Even that, it's hard for me to get behind because it's such a situational type of play. So I just don't think it affects the game enough for it to, I don't know, get this much attention year in and year out where the league's constantly trying to remove it.
Why do you think even teams, like you hear Sean McDermott, Mike Tomlin, guys in the, it's like you don't even play the Eagles except once every 4 years or in the Super Bowl. What do you attribute the fact that this seems to be annoying teams around the league?
The McDermott one is weird because this guy is on the committee, but at the same time ran it more than any team outside of the Eagles. So he's saying
4 times in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs.
And it didn't work, so maybe that's why. He was kind of a little upset that in the AFC Championship it failed, and so he's over that play. But for him to say that it's all about like protecting the players, and yet he runs it more than anybody but Nick Sirianni feels hypocritical to me. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think, again, it's maybe there's some jealousy to it but the thing is everybody can do it. So I don't know why they don't just try it themselves. Like the Eagles and the Bills have had success with it as well in the past.
It is interesting too, because the Packers were the ones that put this forward. And they've actually had some success stopping it.
Yeah.
They did it last year, in fact. And,
Right.
and so it's one of those, and the Packers stole it. They use Tucker Kraft now instead of the quarterback. They use a tight end. We've seen the Chiefs use Travis Kelce in these things. It feels like there's just an opportunity to be creative here, and teams are saying, we don't want that. We want to just get this out. Is there a compromise in your mind here other than what I suggested earlier? Just call the play correctly.
I think it's just call the play correctly, or even if you remove the pushing part of this play, it's not that different than a QB sneak. When the Patriots used to run Tom Brady up the middle, when the Eagles used Carson Wentz with
that felt
quarterback sneaks,
automatic. Every time Tom Brady got under center and ran a
Exactly.
QB sneak, it felt like they got a first down every single time, and no one was doing
exactly. And when the Eagles had Carson Wentz, even before this tush push era, they had a lot of success with the quarterback sneak. I think that's the part people are missing. The push helps a little bit. It gives you somewhat of an advantage, but the main part of this play that's so automatic is the Eagles' elite offensive line and a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds. I think even if they remove the push part, the Eagles are going to still be pretty unstoppable on 4th and inches, like most teams would be if they just kept it simple. The Eagles just keep it simple, and instead of running a play out of shotgun on 4th and inches, they're just jamming up the middle and getting that 1 yard. And so I don't know why they're almost getting punished for just making the obvious decision that everybody else in the league could do as well.
Would you be opposed to them saying, look, the push part is the part that we need to get? Like that used to be a thing that you could not do. And then they kind of just said, we don't really care about it anymore. Like if they went back to saying, look, no one lined up behind the quarterback can push, but still do the rest of this. That seems reasonable to me. And I think the Eagles it would probably affect them exactly 0.
That's the thing. I'm not really that passionate about the play staying in the game. If it's removed, that's fine. Because again, I think the Eagles are still going to be the best short yardage offense in football. Yeah. It's the reasoning behind it.
They also have Saquon Barkley for crying out loud.
Exactly. It's the reasoning behind it that bothers me, because I know it's more about the Eagles' success compared to the rest of the league, and it doesn't have to do with the player safety. And I wish these coaches and teams would just come out and say that.
All right. Thanks to Louis for joining the show. Awesome to speak with Mr. DiBiase. Even though I hope the Packers beat the Eagles next year at some point when they play. Much more to come here this week on Locked on Packers. Excited to bring it to you. Follow me on the social medias, Peter _ Bukowski. That's on Twitter. On Blue Sky, you got to find my name. On Threads, you got to find my name. We're on Threads. We're putting all the content on Threads now. Go follow me on Threads. That'd be great. We're on TikTok. Locked On Packers is on TikTok. Locked On Packers is on all the social medias. We're on YouTube. We're wherever you find podcasts. So you can stay Locked On Packers.